The courtroom doors swing open as Judge Lauren Lake prepares to hear one of the most emotionally charged cases to cross her bench in recent memory. Today's case involves Crystal Martinez, a 28-year-old medical assistant from Phoenix, Arizona, who stands before the court with her 4-year-old daughter, Sophia. Crystal is here to determine once and for all whether her high school sweetheart, Marcus Thompson, is Sophia's biological father. The tension in the room is palpable as Marcus enters, his face a mixture of hope and anxiety. He's traveled from across the country, leaving his new life in Atlanta because he believes with every fiber of his being that Sophia is his daughter. Crystal's current boyfriend, Devon Richards, sits in the gallery, his arms crossed and his expression skeptical. He's been raising Sophia as his own for the past 2 years, and the thought of losing her terrifies him. The case is complicated by the fact that Crystal was involved with both men during the time of conception, a fact that has haunted her for years and created a web of uncertainty that has damaged relationships and left a little girl without clarity about her identity. As Judge Lake reviews the case files, she learns that Crystal and Marcus were the quintessential high school romance. They met during their sophomore year at Desert Ridge High School, where Marcus was the star quarterback and Crystal was captain of the debate team. Their relationship was the kind that made other students envious, filled with passionate declarations of forever and dreams of building a future together. They dated for 3 years, weathering the typical teenage storms and emerging stronger each time. However, during their senior year, just months before graduation, their relationship hit a catastrophic breaking point. Marcus had been offered a full scholarship to play football at Georgia Tech, an opportunity that would take him 2,000 miles away from Phoenix. Crystal, meanwhile, had been accepted to Arizona State University with plans to study nursing. The geographic distance created tensions neither of them knew how to navigate. They began arguing constantly about the future, about commitment, about whether their love could survive the separation. In a moment of anger and hurt after a particularly devastating fight about Marcus's impending move, Crystal made a decision that would alter the course of multiple lives. She went to a party where she reconnected with Devon, a former classmate who had always harbored feelings for her. Crystal's voice trembles as she recounts the events of that fateful night to Judge Lake. She explains that she and Marcus had broken up after a heated argument where he accused her of trying to hold him back from his dreams. Hurt and angry, she went to a graduation party at a friend's house, determined to prove to herself that she didn't need Marcus Thompson. Devon was there, attentive and kind, offering her the comfort and validation she desperately craved in that moment. They talked for hours about their futures, their fears, and their disappointments. One thing led to another, and Crystal admits that she and Devon were intimate that night. She emphasizes to the court that she never intended for it to happen, that she was emotionally vulnerable and made a choice she immediately regretted. The very next day, Marcus appeared at her door with flowers and apologies, begging for another chance. He told her that he couldn't imagine his life without her, that he would find a way to make the long-distance relationship work. Moved by his sincerity and still deeply in love with him, Crystal forgave him and they reconciled. For the next 2 months, until Marcus left for college, they were inseparable. During this time, Crystal discovered she was pregnant, and she automatically assumed Marcus was the father because of the timing, and because she wanted so desperately for it to be true. Marcus takes the stand, his emotions barely contained as he recalls the moment Crystal told him about the pregnancy. He was in his dorm room at Georgia Tech, just settling into his freshman year, when she called him with the news. He remembers the fear and excitement that washed over him simultaneously, the way his hands shook as he held the phone. Without hesitation, he told Crystal he would come back to Phoenix, that he would defer his scholarship and get a job to support their family. However, Crystal insisted that he stay in school and pursue his football dreams. She assured him that she had her family's support and that they would make it work. For months, Marcus sent every spare dollar back to Phoenix Video, called Crystal constantly, and planned his life around being a father. He decorated a corner of his dorm room with ultrasound pictures and bought tiny football jerseys in preparation for his son or daughter. When Sophia was born during his winter break, Marcus was in the delivery room, cutting the umbilical cord and cradling his daughter for the first time. He describes that moment as the most profound of his entire life, the instant he became a father and felt a love more powerful than anything he'd ever experienced. For the first few months of Sophia's life, despite the distance, Marcus was as involved as possible, returning to Phoenix every chance he got and maintaining constant communication with Crystal. The relationship between Crystal and Marcus began to deteriorate during Sophia's first year. The strain of long-distance parenting, combined with the pressures of Marcus's demanding football schedule and Crystal's exhaustion as a new mother, created a chasm between them. Their video calls became arguments about money, about Marcus's inability to be physically present, and about Crystal's feeling of abandonment. Marcus explains to the court that he felt trapped between two worlds, desperately wanting to be with his daughter, but also committed to completing his education and securing a future that could provide for his family. Crystal counters that she felt like a single mother, doing everything alone while Marcus got to live the carefree college life. The resentment built until finally, when Sophia was 18 months old, Crystal told Marcus she thought they should see other people. She claimed she needed someone who could be there physically, someone who could help with the 3 a.m. feedings and the doctor's appointments and the daily challenges of raising a child. Marcus was devastated, but he understood her frustration. He agreed to the separation, but insisted that nothing would change his relationship with Sophia. He would still be her father, still send support, still visit whenever possible. For several months, they maintained this arrangement, with Marcus remaining committed to his daughter, even as his romantic relationship with Crystal ended. Devon Richards entered the picture approximately 6 months after Crystal and Marcus's romantic relationship officially ended. Crystal met him at the hospital where she worked as a medical assistant. Devon was a pharmaceutical sales representative who frequently visited the facility, and he remembered Crystal from their high school days. He asked her out for coffee, and Crystal, lonely and exhausted from single parenthood, agreed. Their relationship developed quickly, with Devon proving himself to be attentive, reliable, and wonderful with Sophia. Unlike Marcus, Devon was physically present. He helped with bedtime routines, attended pediatrician appointments, and was there for the everyday moments that Marcus could only experience through phone screens. Within months, Devon had essentially moved into Crystal's apartment and taken on a father role in Sophia's life. He loved the little girl as if she were his own, reading her bedtime stories and teaching her to count. Marcus, still in Atlanta completing his degree, watched this development with growing concern and jealousy. He felt like he was being replaced, that another man was stealing the precious moments of his daughter's childhood. The tension between the two men was evident during Marcus's visits to Phoenix, with Devon making comments about being the one who was really there, for Sophia and Marcus responding with reminders that biology mattered. The seeds of doubt about Sophia's paternity were planted innocuously during a family gathering at Crystal's mother's house. Devon's sister, visiting from California, commented on how much Sophia looked like Devon, noting similar facial features and mannerisms. The comment was meant as a compliment, an observation about how Devon and Sophia had bonded, but it lodged itself in Devon's mind. He began noticing things he hadn't paid attention to before. Sophia had green eyes, while both Crystal and Marcus had brown eyes. Her hair texture was different from Marcus's. Her smile seemed to mirror Devon's own. Late one night, unable to shake these observations, Devon confronted Crystal about the timeline of her pregnancy. He asked her directly if there was any possibility he could be Sophia's father. Crystal's face, Devon reports, went pale, and she became defensive. She insisted that Marcus was definitely the father, that the timing made it impossible for it to be anyone else. But her reaction planted doubt, and Devon couldn't let it go. He began researching genetics, asking questions about when exactly Sophia was conceived and comparing dates. The more he investigated, the more he realized that the timeline Crystal had always presented might not be as clear, cut as she'd claimed. He calculated that if Sophia was conceived when Crystal said she was, she should have been born a week or two later than she actually was. Under Devon's persistent questioning, Crystal finally admitted the truth she had been hiding for years. Through tears, she confessed that there had been one night with Devon before she and Marcus reconciled, right around the time she would have conceived Sophia. She swore she had convinced herself it couldn't be Devon's baby because she wanted so desperately for Sophia to be Marcus's. The admission shattered Devon's trust, but also filled him with a strange hope that the child he'd been raising might actually be his biological daughter. Devon insisted that they needed to know the truth, that all three of them deserved to know who Sophia's real father was. Crystal resisted at first, terrified of what the revelation might do to Marcus, who had loved and provided for Sophia, believing she was his daughter. She was also afraid of what it might mean for her own reputation, knowing that people would judge her for the deception. However, Devon gave her an ultimatum. Either they pursue paternity testing to determine the truth, or he would walk away from the relationship entirely. He couldn't continue raising Sophia and building a life with Crystal while this fundamental question remained unanswered. Reluctantly, Crystal agreed, and they contacted Marcus to inform him of the situation. Marcus's response was one of shock, anger, and deep hurt, but he too agreed that the truth needed to come out. The revelation devastated Marcus in ways that went beyond simple anger. For 3 years, he had structured his entire life around being Sophia's father. He had made financial sacrifices, sending money to Crystal for childcare and expenses when he could barely afford his own rent. He had turned down opportunities to study abroad and participate in summer training camps so he could spend time in Phoenix with his daughter. He had introduced Sophia to his parents, his siblings, his friends, always with immense pride, telling everyone about his beautiful, brilliant little girl. Every decision he made considered Sophia's well-being and future. Now Crystal was telling him that everything he believed might be based on a lie. On the phone call when Crystal revealed the possibility that Devon might be Sophia's father, Marcus reportedly broke down. He told Crystal that she had stolen 3 years of his life, that she had allowed him to bond with a child who might not be his, and that if Sophia wasn't his daughter, he didn't know how he would survive the loss. His friends and family in Atlanta rallied around him, with his mother encouraging him to pursue legal action if the paternity test proved Crystal had knowingly deceived him. Despite his anger, Marcus couldn't bring himself to cut off contact with Sophia while they awaited testing, because regardless of biology, she was the little girl he had loved as a daughter. Judge Lake listens intently as both men describe their relationships with Sophia and what fatherhood means to them. Marcus speaks passionately about the bond he's developed with Sophia over 3 years. He describes their video calls where she shows him her artwork, tells him about her day at preschool, and says, "I love you, Daddy," before bed. He talks about the visits to Phoenix where he takes her to the zoo, teaches her to ride a bicycle, and reads her favorite books over and over. He provides evidence of consistent financial support, showing bank statements and receipts proving he sent money regularly for Sophia's care. Marcus emphasizes that he's been there for Sophia in every way possible given the distance, and that being her father has given his life purpose and meaning. Devon, on the other hand, describes the daily reality of parenting. He's the one who comforts Sophia when she has nightmares, who packs her lunch for preschool, who knows her favorite foods and the specific way she likes her bedtime routine. He attends every school event, every birthday party, every doctor's appointment. Devon argues that while biology is important, real fatherhood is about showing up every single day, and that's what he's done. He loves Sophia completely and can't imagine his life without her. The judge notes the genuine love and commitment from both men, acknowledging the impossible situation Crystal's choices have created. Crystal's testimony reveals the immense burden of guilt she's carried for years. She admits to the court that she made terrible decisions and that her attempt to protect everyone by hiding the truth only made things worse. She explains that when she discovered she was pregnant, she was terrified. She was 19 years old, had just graduated high school, and was facing parenthood largely alone since Marcus was in Atlanta. When she realized there was a possibility Devon could be the father, she was overwhelmed with shame. She had grown up in a religious household where her parents had strong values about relationships and intimacy, and the thought of admitting what had happened was unbearable. She convinced herself that the baby had to be Marcus's because the alternative was too complicated. As time went on and Marcus bonded with Sophia, Crystal found it increasingly impossible to admit the truth. She watched Marcus fall in love with this child, saw him sacrifice for her, and couldn't bring herself to shatter his world with uncertainty. When Devon came into her life and took on a fatherly role, Crystal felt relief that Sophia would have a father figure present even if things with Marcus didn't work out romantically. She never imagined that Devon would figure out the timeline or that the truth would eventually demand to be confronted. Now, sitting in paternity court, Crystal realizes the magnitude of her deception and how it has hurt everyone involved, most especially Sophia. The psychological impact on Sophia becomes a central concern as Judge Lake questions Crystal about how this situation affects the child. Crystal admits that Sophia is confused about why there's suddenly so much tension between the adults in her life. At 4 years old, Sophia knows Marcus as Daddy and Devon as Devon, though Devon has functioned as a father figure. Recently, Sophia has started asking questions about why Daddy lives so far away and why Devon is always there instead. Child psychology experts would note that children Sophia's age are developing their sense of identity and security, and uncertainty about parental relationships can create lasting anxiety. Judge Lake emphasizes to everyone present that regardless of the outcome of the paternity test, Sophia's emotional well-being must be the priority. The judge points out that this little girl has done nothing wrong, but is at the center of a storm created by adult decisions. If Marcus is the father, then the current arrangement where he's the legal father but Devon is the daily presence needs to be reconsidered. If Devon is the father, then Marcus will need to navigate the heartbreaking process of redefining his relationship with a child he's loved as his daughter. Either way, the adults in Sophia's life need to put aside their hurt and anger to ensure she grows up knowing she is loved and secure. The courtroom atmosphere becomes even more charged when Marcus's mother, Patricia Thompson, testifies. She speaks with barely controlled anger about the pain this situation has caused her son and their entire family. Patricia describes how she's been Sophia's grandmother for 3 years, how she's bought Christmas presents and birthday gifts, how she's babysat during Marcus's visits to Phoenix, and how she's loved this child as her granddaughter. She's shared photos of Sophia with friends, introduced her at church as her granddaughter, and welcomed her fully into the Thompson family. Patricia testifies that if Sophia is not Marcus's daughter, the betrayal and loss will be devastating, not just for Marcus, but for everyone who has bonded with this child. She's particularly angry that Crystal allowed this to continue for so long, arguing that if Crystal had doubts about paternity, she should have sought testing immediately after birth rather than allowing years of bonding to occur. Patricia also expresses concern about the financial aspect, noting that Marcus has sent thousands of dollars to support Sophia, money that came from student loans and part-time jobs while he was struggling through college. If Sophia isn't his daughter, Patricia believes Crystal should be held accountable for accepting that support under false pretenses. The grandmother's testimony adds another layer of complexity to the case, highlighting how paternity uncertainty affects entire families, not just the potential fathers. Devon's testimony reveals his own emotional journey and the difficult position he's in. He explains to Judge Lake that learning he might be Sophia's biological father has been both hopeful and terrifying. On one hand, it would mean that the child he's loved and raised is actually his daughter, which would fulfill a deep desire for biological parenthood. On the other hand, he recognizes that claiming paternity would devastate Marcus and potentially create years of legal and emotional complications. Devon admits that part of him hoped the test would confirm Marcus as the father, simply because it would be easier for everyone. But another part of him has already bonded with Sophia as if she were his own, and the possibility of a biological connection feels right to him. He describes moments where he's looked at Sophia and seen his own childhood photos, where her personality quirks mirror his own, where the connection feels undeniable. Devon also addresses the difficult reality that if he is Sophia's biological father, he'll need to navigate co-parenting with Crystal while also somehow acknowledging the role Marcus has played in Sophia's life. He states that he doesn't want to erase Marcus from Sophia's life regardless of the test results, that he recognizes the love and commitment Marcus has shown. However, he also asserts his right to be recognized as her father if biology confirms it, including legal rights and responsibilities. Judge Lake takes this moment to address the broader implications of the case and deliver some hard truths to everyone involved. She speaks directly to Crystal about the responsibility that comes with honesty, especially regarding matters as fundamental as a child's paternity. The judge emphasizes that while mistakes happen and people make poor choices in moments of emotional turmoil, those mistakes compound when they're covered up rather than addressed. Crystal's decision to hide the possibility of Devon being the father may have seemed like the path of least resistance at the time, but it has created a situation where multiple people's hearts are at stake, and a child's identity is uncertain. Judge Lake also addresses both men, acknowledging the genuine love and commitment each has shown to Sophia. She notes that this case represents one of the most difficult aspects of paternity disputes, when there are two good men who both want to be a father to the same child, rather than a situation where someone is trying to avoid parental responsibility. The judge explains to the courtroom that advances in DNA testing have made paternity determination highly accurate, and that while the truth may be painful for some, it's necessary for everyone to move forward. She emphasizes that regardless of the biological outcome, Sophia will need the adults in her life to behave with maturity and grace. The moment of truth arrives as Judge Lake prepares to reveal the results of the DNA paternity test. The tension in the courtroom is overwhelming. Marcus sits with his hands clasped, his leg bouncing nervously, his entire future hanging on the words the judge is about to speak. Devon has his arm around Crystal, who is crying quietly, her face in her hand. Marcus's mother, Patricia, has her eyes closed, lips moving in what appears to be prayer. The gallery is silent except for the sound of Crystal's muffled sobs. Judge Lake looks at each person individually, acknowledging the gravity of this moment and the life-changing nature of what she's about to reveal. She holds the envelope containing the results, taking a moment to remind everyone present that regardless of what the results show, Sophia is an innocent child who deserves love and stability. The judge emphasizes that biology is important, but it's not the only thing that matters in determining who will be the best father for Sophia moving forward. She asks both Marcus and Devon to consider carefully how they'll react to the results and how their reactions will affect everyone involved, especially the child at the center of this case. The seconds feel like hours as Judge Lake finally opens the envelope and begins to read the results of the DNA analysis. Judge Lake announces that according to the DNA test results, Marcus Thompson is not the biological father of Sophia Martinez. The courtroom erupts with gasps and emotional reactions. Marcus's face crumbles, and he drops his head into his hands, his shoulders shaking with sobs. His mother rushes to comfort him, wrapping her arms around her son as he processes the devastating news that the child he's loved for 3 years is not his daughter. Devon's reaction is more complicated. There's a flash of vindication, of relief that his suspicions were correct, but also visible discomfort at Marcus's pain. Crystal is inconsolable, crying uncontrollably as the weight of her deception and its consequences becomes fully real. Judge Lake allows a moment for the initial emotional impact to settle before continuing. She then reveals the second part of the results. Devon Richards is the biological father of Sophia Martinez with 99% certainty. Devon closes his eyes and takes a deep breath, a mix of emotions playing across his face. While he's relieved to have confirmation, he's also overwhelmed by the reality that he is actually Sophia's father and all the responsibilities that entails. Judge Lake addresses Marcus directly, acknowledging his pain and the genuine love he's shown for Sophia. She reminds him that while he may not be Sophia's biological father, the bond they've developed over 3 years is real and valuable, and that if he chooses, he can still play a positive role in her life. In the aftermath of the paternity results, Judge Lake facilitates a difficult but necessary conversation about how everyone will move forward. She speaks to Devon about the importance of legally establishing his paternity and taking on the full responsibilities of fatherhood, including financial support and consistent presence in Sophia's life. Devon commits to doing everything necessary to be the father Sophia deserves. Judge Lake then turns to Marcus, acknowledging his extraordinary pain and validating his feelings of betrayal and loss. She encourages him to seek counseling to process this trauma and to take time to decide what role, if any, he wants in Sophia's life going forward. The judge makes clear that Marcus has no legal obligation to maintain a relationship with Sophia, but that if he chooses to remain involved in some capacity, it could benefit the child who knows him as a father figure. Crystal receives the harshest words from Judge Lake, who emphasizes that her choices created this painful situation and that she must now focus entirely on Sophia's well-being rather than her own comfort. The judge orders Crystal to be completely honest with Sophia as she grows up about her paternity, to facilitate a healthy relationship between Sophia and Devon, and to respect whatever boundaries Marcus needs to establish. As the court session ends, the 3 adults must leave the courtroom and begin the challenging process of rebuilding their lives around this new truth. The camera captures Marcus walking out alone, his mother beside him, while Devon and Crystal hold each other, both crying, as they contemplate their future as Sophia's parents. The case serves as a powerful reminder of how choices made in moments of emotional turmoil can have profound, lasting consequences, and how truth, though painful, is ultimately necessary for healing and moving forward.